The shadow of Redstone in the bleak mining town of Redstone, Wyoming, where coal dust coated the streets and the wind howled through abandoned shafts, lived Daniel and Grace Wheeler. Daniel, 53, was a gruff miner with lungs scarred by black dust. Grace, 49, was a clerk at the town's only hardware store, her hands steady despite years of toil. They'd been married 28 years, their life a grind of survival. No kids, just a sagging house by the rail yard and a bond eroded by time. But beneath their coal-stained days, a shadow was lengthening, one that would bury them in blood and betrayal. Prologue. The coal-stained key, it began with a key. One icy November night, Daniel came home to find Grace fumbling with a small rusted key, her fingers smudged with coal dust. She shoved it into her pocket when he entered, muttering, found it at work. But her coat reeked of gasoline, and a fresh bruise bloomed on her cheek. Daniel asked, "Where you been?" She snapped, "Nowhere, Dan," and turned away. The next morning, he found a crumpled note in her apron, 11:10. Shaft 9, $15 K. Burnett. Not her handwriting. Daniel's chest tightened. Grace was locked in something dark and deadly. Chapter 1. The shaft's secret 5 nights later. Grace said she was doing inventory late. She left at 7 p.m., her eyes darting. Daniel waited, suspicion clawing. By midnight, she wasn't home. He tracked her phone off, but last pinged near Shaft 9, a collapsed mine sealed since a cave-in killed 6 men. He grabbed his pickaxe and drove. The shaft's entrance was a black moor, Grace's faded Ford parked beside a grey pickup. Through the snow, he saw her with a man, hulking with a shaved head and a scar across his lip. Blood pooled beside a tarp-wrapped shape. Grace handed him a bag. He gave her a roll of cash. Daniel's blood froze. They weren't lovers. They were conspirators in murder. Chapter 2. The scarred reaper Daniel kept quiet, digging instead. He asked his shiftmate, Earl, a grizzled miner with a rap sheet, about a scarred guy near the shaft. Earl spat. That's Frank Reaper Malone. Runs the Redstone Rats. Meth, guns, bodies. Cold as ice. Daniel hit the county jail logs. Frank, 55, had a history. Trafficking, assault, suspected hits, never convicted. No link to Grace. But Earl growled. He's got a woman who ties the loose ends. Daniel searched her car. In the glove box, a Colt with a scratched serial and a photo of Grace and Frank, dated 87, grinning at a bar. On the back, Frank and G, blood thick. Daniel reeled. She'd hidden a brother all these years. Chapter 3. The ledger of Ash Daniel grew relentless. Grace started locking her purse, burning papers in the yard, coming home with soot-streaked hands. One night, while she slept, he jimmied her dresser drawer. Inside, $25,000 in blood-smeared cash, a ledger of drops, $200 K total. Names half crossed out in black. A note in Frank's scrawl. She's cracking. Next one's her call. He called his old union rep, Rex, an ex-cop turned recluse. Rex arrived, hard-eyed and silent. That's a kill list, he said, flipping pages. Grace isn't just moving cash, she's digging graves. Chapter 4. The third claw Rex tailed Grace the next week. She didn't go to the store, but met Frank at Shaft 9. A third figure emerged, lean, with a pockmarked face and a missing finger. Rex got photos. Frank and the pockmarked man dragging a corpse, dealer, gutted, while Grace shoveled coal over it. That's Jimmy Pocktate, Rex said. Frank's butcher, loves his axe. Grace is the cover. Rex bugged her Ford. The next tape was a gut punch. Frank's growl. Pock's antsy, once more. 50K by Friday. Grace, flat. Dan's asking questions. He's a risk. Pock rasped, I'll bury him deep. Daniel gripped his pickaxe. His wife had sentenced him. Chapter 5. The shafts tombed Daniel and Rex scouted Shaft 9, finding a hidden tunnel behind rubble. Inside, a crypt, 9 bodies, some fresh, some bones, all slashed or shot. Cash crates held $130,000, a map marked kill zones across Wyoming. Photos showed Grace at scenes, shovel in hand, eyes hollow. A logbook listed hits. RT Snitch, 11:10, $15 K. Daniel gagged. She was a reaper too. He recalled her father, lost in a shaft collapse. Had Frank pulled her in then, or was she born for this? Chapter 6. The Shadow's truth. Daniel confronted Grace at gunpoint, ledger and Colt on the table. She sneered, then broke. Frank's my half-brother, she spat. Dad's bastard, kept it from you. We ran scams as kids. After he got out last year, he brought Pog Psycho with a grudge. They forced me to kill or rot. She confessed to burying Artie. a rat starting her descent. The ledger tracked blood money. The cash was her share. "I didn't want you dead," she lied. Daniel saw only coal and blood. He called Rex. Chapter 7. The Redstone Reckoning. Daniel and Rex set a trap. They spread word through a barfly. Grace was snitching. That night, Shaft 9 roared with fury. Frank raged at her. Pock swung his axe. Daniel and Rex filmed, Frank confessing kills, Pock detailing graves. The feds, tipped by Rex, stormed in. Gunfire lit the dark. Pock axed an agent, taking a bullet to the chest. Frank fired, shot dead mid-charge. Grace dropped her shovel as cuffs snapped on. The tunnel yielded 10 bodies, $250,000 in cash, and meth bricks, Redstone Rat's ruin. Grace's prince tied her to 5 kills. Her silence damned her. Chapter 8. The dust falls. Grace got life, murder, no parole. Frank and Pock rotted in the shaft. Their empire collapsed. Daniel didn't stay for the trial. He burned the house, sold his gear, and vanished into Wyoming's wilds. A shell of a man. Epilogue. As shadows end Redstone's mines stood silent, their dust swallowing the past. Daniel roamed, haunted by Grace's sneer and the thud of her shovel. She sent a prison note, defiance, no remorse. He let it drift into the wind. Some shadows he knew were carved in stone.